Okay. Well, welcome this evening to a meeting of the joint governing bodies for the city and Shawnee County. I'll call this meeting to order. If you will rise as you are able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk, roll call, please.
Mayor Padilla.
Here.
Council members Hiller. Here. Valdivia Acala.
Here.
Ortiz. Here. Banks.
Here.
Kell.
Here.
Miller. Dobler.
Here.
Duncan. Hofer.
Here.
Commissioners Rapon.
Here.
Cook. And Mays.
Here.
All right, we have 10 present with council members Miller and Duncan and Commissioner Cook absent.
I'm here.
Oh, Miller.
It is Miller.
Okay. So we have 2 absent, 11 present.
Okay, thank you. Move on now to non-action items, Madam Clerk.
The first item is a presentation is the Topeka Riverfront development.
Okay. Mr. Gentlemen, everybody, I think, knows who you are, but if you could introduce yourself for those watching who may not know who you are.
Will do. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, members of the county commission. My name is Greg Schwert. I'm president of Schwert Design Group, also chair of the Topeka Shawnee County Riverfront Authority and the Riverfront Activation Council. And we are here tonight to give you a brief update on where we're at with the riverfront development. We have a lot of information, but we don't have the time to share that tonight. We're going to focus on probably our first phase. Also with me tonight is Kevin Cook. Caught him out of the corner of my eye. Yeah, you're late. Kevin Holland with CFS Engineers. He's co-chair of the Riverfront Authority and the Riverfront Activation Plan. And then also John Hunter, who chairs our task force, who's going to be giving the majority of the presentation tonight. So what we want to do is, what we're looking at now is the structure of the Riverfront Act, the RAC, and our task force. As you can see, it's a well-rounded, well-attended, well-represented task force that we have put together to move this thing forward. And as you know, we've been working on this for decades, quite frankly. I think I've been involved since 2007 or 8 with the riverfront, and we're hoping now is the time to move it forward. We spent the big portion of last year reorganizing the Riverfront Advisory Council, as well as completing our RAC vision plan, which I believe many of you have seen and know about. We can share that with you later as well. But as we moved into this year, then the intent was to move forward, develop a plan, and bring to fruition the intent of Momentum 2027, and that is to create an active river on the activity on the river within the next 2 years. And so now is the time that we wanted to focus and make this happen. We've developed several scenarios. We've been meeting with grant writers. We've been researching other river developments and meeting our peers to determine how they've gone about this. We're working on some campaigns, some fundraising, but John will be sharing mainly with us what his task force has been working on of late. So quickly, there, what the vision looks like, our impact, our environmental stewardship, our economic growth. And as we get into the 3 phases, the first one is to bring to life the opportunities to activate the river immediately. And that's what John has been working on. The second 2 phases will be working with the county. We've had a lot of conversations with them, as well as then fully implementing our plan that we intend to be complete before the completion of the Pope Quincy Viaduct. So with that, I will let John move into his presentation.
Well, I want to begin by thanking everybody for being here tonight and giving us this opportunity to talk with you about this very, very exciting project. And as Greg mentioned, it has been one that has been on the docket for decades. I myself have been involved since 2009 when I was involved in the startup of the Heartland Visioning process. So it's been a long time coming. There have been some fits and starts associated with the project, but I think at this point in time, we have the right people. It's the right time and place to undertake this task, this series of tasks with phase 1, 2, and 3. But tonight we're going to focus on phase 1. I want to start by pointing briefly to the people who are on the task force. Commissioner Rippon and City Manager Perez. They have been involved in the advisory council all during the prep of the Bolton and Menk consulting report. So their knowledge was extensive. When I agreed to come on board, we asked from that committee that they were on who would like to work on the task force. So the majority of the people on the task force were also part of that advisory council. So we have a group of people who are highly intelligent, extremely professional in their area. I'll point out, for instance, Dawn Bueller with Friends of the Caw. You cannot find a more expert person on boat ramps in our entire state than Dawn Miller. She's just excellent. Kevin Holland, engineer, and the work that he's been doing with the Army Corps of Engineers has been extensive, and that's exactly what we need if we're going to do projects on there. And then, of course, to have Commissioner Rippon and City Manager Perez also available, the inner workings that have started over the last 2 months between the city, the county, the task force have just been excellent. I want to, you have a list in front of you right now, the steel removal boat ramp. I'm not going to talk in detail about any of these. I want to give you a quick overview so that you can see just the type of work that's going on and the level of cooperation that we have. And then I'm going to talk with you about the funding structure and the request. Let's take a look at the first one, the steel in the river. We all know we don't have boaters and kayakers go past the city of Topeka because it's too dangerous. And it's all because of the steel that was put in there by the 1951 flood. I'm not going to go into details except to say that because of Kevin Holland working with the Army Corps of Engineers, we have been given emergency approval to remove the steel. The normal approval process when working with the Army Corps can be 18 months to 2 years, and we've been given emergency. So he is already in the process of getting us estimates. Our hope is, as soon as we get the estimates in, understand what the cost is going to be, we could, if we can move forward with the project, by this fall, we may very well have cranes and barges in the river removing the steel. And so very important for opening up the river. That is really a number one. I mean, you put in a boat ramp, but if you're going to send people out into a river full of steel, that's something we certainly don't want to do. So we're real excited about where that process is going. The trail extension, we have met with the people at the Sunflower Foundation. We had, excuse me, we had another meeting just this morning. We're hoping that we will find a funding partner with them. And the area that we're looking at right now, when you're on top of the levee on the north side, you really can't go past the Topeka Avenue Bridge. We have two things. We have the bridge, and then we have the railroad crossing before we could get back up on top of the levee and then proceed all the way out to the next boat ramp and area out by the water intake. We're working with the Sunflower Foundation to help fund that extension that would go under the bridge, across the road tracks, and up and over, and that's moving forward. This project, we're working with directly with Braxton Copley, and again with Kevin. We're going to be preparing the engineering plans. We're going to be looking at what we can get started on that part of the process, and then we'll take the estimates for cost, take those to the foundation on the funding side. We'll also then take that plan and we'll take that to the railroad so that they can begin putting pen to paper, do their analysis, because they'll be responsible for actually putting in a secure crossing for us for bikes and walkers. So again, full cooperation, city, county, and now again with the Sunflower Foundation. The buildings on the property, that property was originally considered during the consolidation plan when we consolidated the two parks and rec departments. The buildings are owned by the city, but been occupied by the county for all these many years. The county is now in the process of moving out. We've had meetings with John Bell and Tim Laurent and Commissioner Rippon and other people to talk about those buildings. We're looking at the one that we refer to as the blue office building on the property. We want to turn that into a river education center. We also want to use part of that space as a rental space for both bikes and kayak rentals. And in that case, we're working with Andy Fry on the bike side of it. And Andy, by the way, he just joined our task force. So his name is not on that list, but he's right there. He's also working on the master plan for the trails development for the county. So he's very, very knowledgeable about that. And again, Jennifer and her partner run the Dirty Girls Adventure. And again, they do boating adventures all up and down the river, but none of them by Topeka because of the conditions, not having a boat ramp in our steel. But they're very interested. We're also interested in using part of that building to have a display of the history of that area that's known as Papin's Landing, that has been certified by the National Trails Park in Washington, D.C. as an original crossing of the Oregon Trail. It has associations with the Underground Railroad. It's listed as one of the reasons why Cyrus K. Holliday identified Topeka as a place to establish the capital, was because of that crossing. It's historically significant. We would like to put in the educational area pictures, charts, information about its history. And then we'd like to use that, that space for education so that we can bring in Boy Scouts, Girl Scouts, church groups, whatever, so that we can work with the Friends of the Caw and appropriately educate people who are going to be getting into that river on how to kayaks and canoe safely, etc., how to approach the river and be aware of everything that you need to be in terms of safety and security. So we're real excited about that. We have two buildings on the property that we simply want to demolish. There's a Quonset hut and a small other little office type building. There is a warehouse building, and we don't want to make a decision on that yet. We are in the process of making a contact with the State Department of Wildlife and Parks. The state has airboats for other parts of the river for rescue in case of emergencies. We have none located in the Topeka area because, again, nobody is going through our part of the river. So we'd like to talk to them that once we open everything up, might they want to store an airboat or two and have that airboat stored in that warehouse area. That warehouse area also might have some capabilities because we're going to put a parking lot on that space, and we're going to need some outdoor restrooms for the public, and the hope is we might be able to utilize part of the inside of that warehouse building to build those facilities. So all of that is being looked at. The fence that goes around that property right now is being looked at for repurposing so that we can extend the fence because we don't want cars pulling up on the levee. So we want to extend that all along the area where we're putting in the new extension of the trail under the bridge. So we're talking about repurposing the fence that's already there, adding what else we need, but we think that'll be important. But we want the site not to be blocked by the fence, and so we will leave openings along the way so people can walk right through them. We're going to be looking later on this summer to get estimates for that process to take place. The boat ramp is going to take a while. Dawn has already done an excellent job with providing us with a report on all the steps. Braxton Copley has been meeting with her on that, so we understand the permit process. We understand through working with the Army Corps of Engineers. And again, we're going to have an engineering report and a permit request. That may take us 18 months to 2 years. So the reality is we may finish this project, and then the last thing we do is do a ribbon cutting when we put in the boat ramp on it. So that's, if you have some questions on some of these others, I'd be happy to take those at the end of our time. The last thing I want to talk with you is about the funding. Whoops. There we go. You can see the estimate that we have right now, $1.3 million. I don't want to stand on that amount. We have 8 components to our project. We have already had conversations. We've had some preliminary estimates, and everything, we think we can come out to that number, very close to that number. And here's the way we want to bring it down. We're making an ask of both the city and the county for a total of $400,000, $200,000 per year over the next 2 years. Now, you have control of that money. You make your own decisions. We act as the middleman, if you will. We have set up already. We will accept checks from outside groups or transfers from the city and county would be made to the Greater Topeka Partnership Foundation. They will serve as our 501c3. Greg Heidemann from Kaw Valley Bank, he is working on setting up our account at Kaw Valley Bank, and then Craig Cook with Fidelity Bank will serve as the treasurer for our process. So you have 2 banks involved, and you have the 501c3 under the Greater Topeka Partnership Foundation for accepting of money. There are 3 phases of how the money would be used. 1, the city will, and we hope we'll get to a meeting on this later on this summer, and look at the components and basically say to us, Dr. Perez would say, the city will do that. That means they will use their personnel under their time period and their money, and whatever that costs, that's what they're going to cover. That's just one way of doing it. The county can do it the same way. Just pick a project and say you're going to do it, and you work through your own time frame, your own funding structure. The second way that it might be approached is that both with city and county, they say, we don't have the personnel or we don't have the time, hire a consultant or hire a company. We as a task force with the personnel that we have, we will work within North Topeka, South Topeka, anywhere in the county, find the right people, and we won't have to then go through the bidding process for the city or the county, but select the right person to do the job gets done, and then the city or the county simply issue a paycheck for what's necessary there. And then the third component is we believe by midsummer to late summer, we'll have an active plan right now to do fundraising. I want to remind you that the Greater Topeka Partnership, as part of the 2027 plan, they already went out and they raised money. And they raised money in order to cover costs associated with the consultants and that. But the Riverfront development was a number 2 priority. Our position right now is that we're going to go back to a lot of those same funders and make a request to say we are now doing exactly what the Greater Topeka Partnership said we were going to do. We're going to move forward on this project. So there will be some phases that either we will pay directly or we will pay in cooperation with either the city and county. And we do, by the way, expect there may be a project or 2, a component, that is a collaboration between the city and the county. And the ultimate plan is once it is developed, beautified, looks like a park, and is completed, that property will then follow the assigned agreement that came with the original consolidation plans, and it says in that plan that the property will then, after development, be conceded over to the county, and the county would agree to maintain that property in the future. And I might add, the county is already maintaining property at the other boat ramps within the county, so this would be an additional boat ramp and space for them. And we also know that the county operates other facilities within the park
of spaces where they use them as classrooms and other types of activities. And so that educational center makes a lot of sense in the conversations that we've had. And then there's the beautification, and that's going to be totally up to them as to how they would like to beautify that space and make it really appealing to the public. So 2.5 years from now, you should be able to come down and fly off along Curtis Street, pull into a parking lot, take the bike off the top of your car, walk up on top of the levee, and head on out all the way to the water intake on that. And hopefully, Commissioner Hiller, hopefully we'll get that also extended all the way out to those soccer fields that I know you've wanted for a long time. Thank you very much. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to take additional questions from you.
Yeah, and I just might add to what John has said, his task force has been extremely busy and doing some amazing things. At the same time, we are developing a grant committee, and we are doing a lot of research. We're talking to some of those that were involved with the development in Salina and how they went about it. Michelle has a great network now that we're gathering a lot of information from. We're doing foundation outreach to multiple foundations across the country that would be interested in potentially participating in this. And we're building relationships. And as John said, we're also starting a fundraising campaign, again, looking for some of those private dollars. And at the same time, we have some exciting things going on in terms of we have actually 2 outside developers from outside the state of Kansas who are very interested in developing on the river. One of them is a developer that has done multiple developments on other rivers across the country, and they like to be the first in on the projects they're involved in, and they're now still in their due diligence phase, but are continually asking us for additional information on utilities and land ownership and timelines and things. So hopefully there's some things developing from that standpoint as well.
Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. Councilman Banks.
Thank you all for bringing a project in front of us today. One of the things that I look at, and this is a project that certainly excites us, but I'm wondering if you've been hearing voices from the community for approval, disapproval, or concerns, any of those things.
Mr. Banks, we have. We did a feasibility study. We had a lot of community involvement meetings when we were doing the study, the vision plan that we did. And at that time, we had overwhelming support from what we were trying to accomplish. We did some online surveys with our consultant, and the number of responses that we had for the size of our community, they had never seen before. And those were positive, and it was allowing them to give their input as to what they wanted to see, wanted to happen, not only on the river, but around the river and things like that. So I'm sure we have some naysayers, but we have had a lot of positive and interest in what we're trying to do.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I would like to add, if I may, a number of years ago, we had people from the National Trails Park come into town, and we, over at the Great Overland Station, we had 5 days, 100 people per day in a charrette going through the whole process and the development and the understanding of the history and things that could be done. So this is something that not only has an immediacy tied in with the Bolton and Mencken, what they've been doing, but community involvement and knowledge about wanting to get this done. It goes back easily 10 years. And Commissioner Hiller was at those charrettes for those 5 days. Commissioner Rippon was with Shawnee County Parks and Recreation at that time, but he even did some of the drawings for what ended up in the final plans that we have copies of from that time period. So it really has been an extended period of time in which the community has had involvement. Thank you.
And the National Park Service actually came back to Topeka just last year, still very interested in what we're doing and wanting to participate and see this project happen from their standpoint.
Okay, we have questions from Commissioner Cook, Deputy Mayor, and Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala. So Commissioner Cook.
Thank you, Mayor. Mr. Hunter, can you go back through your funding request The packet and slideshow had a funding request of $1,300,000. You indicated that you were asking for $400,000 from the city and from the county over a 2-year period. That only adds up to less than half of, or a little over half of what you're requesting. Is there fundraising for the other half of that seven? I mean, how do we get to the math?
Yeah, the 1.3, it came about very early in the process when we tried to estimate out some of the components. For instance, when I went personally to Topeka Sand and Concrete, they worked with me on what it would take to put in a gravel road down on the floodplain, what would it take to put in a turnaround parking space, approximately 50 by 50, and to re-gravel this connective way over. So they gave me a price on those, and it was varied in its context. Dawn Bueller provided us with some pricing on what it took to put in other boat ramps around the area. So we started putting those things together, and we looked at that 1.3. But again, that doesn't talk about any type of fundraising in which somebody would agree to just do the work for us without charging us on the project. It doesn't take in exact numbers on those projects. And part of, again, we did not have at the time we looked at the 1.3, we did not have the cooperation of the Sunflower Foundation. And I think they're going to step in. They spoke today about some 50% of cost coverage if they were to commit to the project. So it's a very, very loose number. I will point out, though, that in the paperwork dealing with the original consolidation plan in Parks and Rec, in that plan, they talk about a group task force to do the work. They talked about boat ramps. They talked about the buildings. And there's a number in there of $1.3 million of costs that they were looking at that time. I think we'll be under that number. And I think that the total of $800,000 coming from city and county would make a great statement, taking that out to anybody in the community to show the kind of support that we're having for that project. And of course, when we get to the end, if I need an extra $100,000, I'll probably be back in front of you.
Also,
Does that answer your question?
It does. If we're to consider this, we need to have this as part of our budgetary process. Both the city and the county are going into budget cycles where we would have our meetings and hearings in June and July, with it being passed in August for their budget for the next year. If you're asking for us to commit to $200,000 from each body, and then also in addition to that, a commitment by this to the Riverfront will soon be met, I'm sure, by requests from Jayhawk Theater, from Sunflower Soccer, from any other entity we have in our community that also needs funds and assistance in expanding their programming as well.
We understand.
Yeah, and I might add to that, Commissioner Cook, to what John said. Again, we understand that this needs to be a private-public partnership. We're not asking for all public funding of this project. That's always been our intent, and quite frankly, the Riverfront Authority only survived for years through private contributions from many of our business owners. So we understand that, and that is exactly why we've already put into place our grant committee, who is actively pursuing grants, looking for funding, looking for other mechanisms that we can use to make this project happen. And hopefully that we will also be able at some point then, we are reaching out to some of our major corporations. As John indicated, we're hitting the same people to get out all the time, but we do have interest in the community, is why we really put and reorganized our Riverfront Advisory Council, and that's our intent.
Thank you.
Deputy Mayor, then Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala.
Thank you for your presentation. Piggybacking off what Councilman Banks said on the community feedback, I have not heard one positive thing about wanting to do this. Everything, social media, emails, everything I've heard is this is not the right time to be doing this. My other reservation is we're dealing with a lot of unknown. We can't see everything that needs to be done, which, like when you talk about removing steel that's been in the water for 70 years, you have zero idea really what it's going to truly cost to get that yanked out. Then what the the environmental impact it will have once you yank something like that out of the water. It changes the water flow, which, tons of sandbars in the Kansas River. So now, what if we get clogged up with the sandbar? And it's like, just like you said earlier, well, if we need to, come back and ask us for more, and that's starting to throw a lot of money at a situation that may not even be a feasible situation. It's scary, and we just putting a pylon on the water. I mean, I've seen all the horror stories of that. Just to try to build that over bridge you're talking about, it's a lot of expense, and sometimes doesn't even get done correctly because of leakage and all that kind of stuff. I see this as a big strain on police and fire. We're gonna possibly put a lot of people out there on the Kansas River, which is very unpredictable, without the experience on it, to go hang out on the sandbars, go out and boat, kayak, that kind of thing. And I think if we just worked on the shorelines, that's probably the best bet we need to go with. But digging in, and diving into the water and trying to figure out what's going on there, I don't think it's feasible at all. And it could be something that we're just throwing money at that then nothing really gets done because the money dries up so quickly that we're back here asking for more. And I just don't, right now, I just don't see it as a feasible thing. And like I said, I haven't heard anything positive from the public via social media or emails.
Could I ask Kevin Holland to come forward and talk to you for a minute? He's been working directly with the Army Corps.
That would be up to the mayor.
In response to the councilman's
Yes,
observation.
directly with, he's working directly on the Steel in the River project.
And while he's coming up, Councilman Kell, I mean, we have had actual bids on the removal of the steel, so we know what that would have cost 5 years ago.
A little longer than that.
But
we had a
again,
company in that
it's
direction.
not a total unknown.
Yeah.
And again, I think that, if we want to grow as a city, we are the only capital city in the United States with a river running through its downtown that has not been developed. Everybody else who's ever done this has faced the same challenges and probably even more. Oklahoma City, now the national training for U.S. Olympics for kayaking, rowing, and whitewater, mowed their river 3 times a summer because they had absolutely no water in it. And they were able to overcome the same obstacles that we're looking at. I agree that there may be some negativity, and a lot of what we heard was the cost of the pedestrian bridge going over the river as maybe a first step. Maybe that's not. We did not really have a plan. It was what was going to develop. I agree. From an economic development standpoint, we need to be developing that land adjacent to the river. That's what these developers are looking at. They're looking at housing on the river. They're looking at commercial activities on the river. So it has to go hand in hand to make all of it happen. But if we decide to do nothing, I mean, again, part of this is not only about the river, it's the connection we've been trying to make for decades between downtown Topeka and Noto, and the river is the bridge that makes that happen. If there's not a pedestrian bridge, that's great. If we develop along the river, that's great. But we do need to do something, and I think that's what John and his task force is trying to do, things that are doable within a short period of time, to make things start to develop and get excitement for those things happening.
And Kevin Holland, Cook Flat and Strobel Engineers, as well as the RAC. But from the perspective of the bridge wasn't, that's not naturally man-made, or it wasn't natural in the river. So we're trying to take out something that collapsed due to a flood, which in today's world, typically if you have a flood of any river, you're trying to pull that steel back out just because of the environmental issues as well as your health and safety situation. So we're trying to pull the steel back out. Environmentally, the sandbars, it's a prairie river. It's going to look a little different once the metal and the steel is out of the river, just because of how the river flows and that current based upon where the sand's going to gather. But it's a prairie river. We're going to have sand dunes throughout that area. They're probably going to be a little in different locations once the steel is removed. We have talked to the Corps. It's not abnormal because they do work around the nation with floods that have bridges go down, and he knew exactly what we were after, and was able to give us approval, which not immediate just because it's the Corps, but the Corps has been very helpful. We've been working with them. They actually came out and walked the river with us, one of their representatives, one of their engineers, last spring. And so he understood floating a barge with a crane and lifting the steel and the metal from the collapsed locations that were there. So from an environmental standpoint, anytime you can take man-made metal and pull it out of a river, I think it's going to be better overall. But it is going to change that river network down there just because of what's been there for 70 years, for sure.
And I might also add that the river is being used, it just doesn't get used past that steel. There are kayak trips, the Riverfront Authority, Don Buehler, use that river all the time. We've been kayaking on it for decades, and so it does get heavily used from that standpoint, as well as the sandbars. I mean, I think there's a trip coming up where we're going to have a camp out on the sandbars. And so those are the kind of activities that are happening that are exciting to people, and we're getting a lot of participation. And I commend the city. The city, a few years back, spent several $1 million rebuilding the weir because the weir was very dangerous. We lost a very prominent doctor, a young doctor in town who got caught up in the weir, and so that has been improved by the city, and we're very thankful for that. This is just a continuation of that plan and that vision of what we're trying to accomplish.
Thank you. I'm trying to be cognizant of time as
Sure.
well. And Councilwoman Valdivia Alcala, you had a question, ma'am?
No, I have a comments. I think that for this initiative, personally, and as an elected official, to me, it should be 100% funded by the private sector. Where is Mars? Where is Target? Where is Walmart? Where is Bimbo? Where are all of these? Where's Goodyear? Where are all of these really large corporations? That's a rhetorical question. I don't need an answer to that. I think that we also have to understand is everybody is asking us for money right now. The MTAA is wanting money. You all are asking for money. We are continuing to put money into the Topeka Hotel, which we are desperately trying to find answers to, and the public is very unhappy with. I have heard, part of this takes place in my district, I've heard very little support for this. I do not support this at all. We may be the only city that doesn't have riverfront development at this point, but we are also in a crisis moment when we look at the 3-year deficit. We've just given a 27% increase to our police force and a very high increase to our firefighters. We can't afford this. We cannot afford this. So this is the time when the private sector needs to be stepping up, applying for grants, and because taxpayers will be really upset because they're so upset about the hotel, no relief on property taxes, we keep raising their utilities, on and on and on. So that's really, there's no questions I have. I understand there was a lot of wonderful vibe and work and all of this, but this is something as a city we would be making a mistake if we support it because we cannot afford it. Thank you.
Further comments or questions for? Oh, I'm sorry.
I have a question, please.
Oh, Marcus, Councilman Miller?
Thank you very much, Mayor. To that point, I just want to make sure that I'm clear on what they're asking. You're asking $200,000 per year per government body, correct?
That is correct.
For 2 years.
Okay.
200,000
For 2 years.
per year for 2 years. And there's also in, what you'll see in your booklet, a request that out of the first 200,000, that there be a transfer of 25,000 to our account in Caw Valley, because there are some things we can take care of. We have to pay for an engineer for the boat ramp and then for the permit process to work with the federal government, through the Army Corps. So there are some smaller items within the project that we'd like to be able to pay for to get started until we can get our fundraising geared up and going on that. So, but it would be out of that same amount. So yes, $200,000 a year for 2 years.
Councilman, that answer your
Okay.
question? Okay.
And to be clear, you said after that 2 years, you said you might be coming to us for something of a much smaller amount, correct?
Well,
If you were to come back to us after
I
2
said
years.
that. My apologies for ever saying that. That slip of the tongue, if you will. Not necessarily the case. I would love to come back and say, by that time, we have covered all of the costs. It is so unknown at this time. We've only been together as a task force for a little over 2 months. And your community, we are all members of your community. We're trying like heck to put this project together. We think we have it extremely well organized right now with the best people that have ever come together for a project like this for the city and the county. And it is your property, and it is going to be the part of the park system. And your community is working to try to do this for you. So yes, our numbers are a little loose right now, but we are working diligently to get those hammered out and get actual closer estimates on the project. So I don't know what the cost is right now in terms of total.
No worries. That's not necessarily what my intent was of asking. It was just, I'm thinking not just 2 years of 400,000 impact from the city of what it will look like 10 to 15 years from now with people coming to our riverfront and people visiting our city because we have that. The impact long-term, I believe, is something that I think I can support. Thank you very much.
I would add that when we had the National Trails Park here, the representative, and they followed it up, I believe it's in writing, they estimated that if we build it, they will come, and they said estimating 50 to 70,000 tourists per year move around this country going along the national trails areas. And ours is identified by them as a National Oregon Trail crossing. And so there is an expectation that we have from the national level that we would increase our tourism as a result of development in that area.
Councilwoman Miller.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to thank you for coming. I've been involved in the Riverfront development since I've been on council and have seen it grow, have seen the variety of people be involved, have seen that mix of Oregon Trail theme to the levee trails going all the way east and west on the north and south sides built into various trails plans, and the county working on that right now. The city taking care of the levees, we paid for that, but we were under orders to do it, to get it ready to be done, as well as the weir. We also, based on our Quincy project, and a grant that we got before that, are responsible for the conversion of the Kansas Avenue Bridge into bike ped bridge, half of it, and half of it for cars. That's coming up in the next couple of years. It might be, various of my colleagues have made some pretty good points about where we are financially as a city, yet it might be of value nonetheless to look at ways that we could partner or grants that we could come up with and apply for as city and county that can help bring this together. Also actively get engaged. You all have done a fine job at getting, you all, we all, whatever, the private sector actively involved and on the front line. And it's an area we haven't grown in a lot as a city, and so that was intentional on your part, and maybe there are ways that we can work together, whether there's money or not, to really optimize hitting that 1.3 million and getting all of the other pieces done as well. You know, there was a lot of feedback about that pedestrian bridge. That was sort of like the last thing if everything else has been done, and instead it ended up being a really visible and certainly comment-driven part. But people are on the river, including going through downtown, and are working on developing all these pieces on both sides and to engage. And so I encourage everybody, all of my colleagues, city and county, to be thinking of ways that we can make the pieces come in. The book will be helpful because people who've not been involved in this aren't even aware of all the moving parts. So it's a lot of information today. Thank you.
Again, being mindful of the time, I want to make sure that we have one person that signed up for public comment, so I don't want to go too far into that. I do agree with some of the comments that were made on both sides of the issue. It's important for us as a city, obviously, as well as the county, to weigh the positive impact of where we put our dollars and our effort. And I think that's something that needs to be given a lot of weight. That's one of the areas of this city that has been unattended for a long time. I can see how that could impact in a positive way residents to the north of the river, not just the city as a whole. I think that would bring a lot of different attention and different visitors to the city and to the North Topeka. So I can see the positive impact of that. But I think it's a careful decision that we need to make, because having just enough dollars to help is better than trying to pay for it all. So I do agree with the efforts to do some fundraising, grant applications, and really call upon the private sector to step up, as they have in the past, when they see a need, and help support this effort, so that giving everything that it could bring to the city as a whole, and specifically to that part of the town, I think it's something that we should not write off on very quickly and give some thought to. So I appreciate your comments and your presentation. And like I said, I'd like to move on now to public comment.
Thank you.
Greg.
Thank
Thank you, John. Okay, we have one individual signed up for public comment this evening, Danielle Twemlow.
Thank you. I feel like I'm going to be reiterating a lot that was said here. I do want to state, though, I'm really excited about this plan. My family has gone through Indianapolis many, many times over the last couple years, and we purposely stay on the riverfront. We look for hotels because it is very engaging. So I'm excited about that. However, I want to take the opportunity while both governing bodies are here today. Many years ago, during state-level emergency preparedness training, I sat in a small room with a bunch of people at the National Guard discussing mitigation. We were asked to consider unlikely but catastrophic scenarios, like what would happen if Tuttle Creek Dam were to be breached. Engineers had analyzed how much water the dam was holding, the force it would unleash, how fast it would move, and the 30-minute window that Topeka would have before flooding. Because this wasn't actually happening at that moment, a strategic risk assessment plan could be created that reduced harm should we ever be forced to evacuate upwards of 1,250 people, 125,000 people in a short period of time, instead of a monumental decision-making process happening in the middle of a crisis. Mitigation is a risk assessment process of potential hazards or threats and evaluating the likelihood they will occur. Estimation of potential human and economic losses based on the exposure and vulnerability of people, buildings, and infrastructure is a top priority in the process according to FEMA. Based on this risk assessment, you develop strategies to reduce the likelihood that impact and identify risks and cost effectiveness and feasibility. It's a continuous process that is crucial to include diverse stakeholders in planning and must remain relevant, a living document through routine maintenance, periodic evaluations to assess changing risks, and priorities to make revisions as needed. So we do this process in our day-to-day lives without realizing it, and we could probably all benefit from doing this a bit more, particularly with budgeting, which is what's bringing us here today, in fact. Our city and our county have been facing major financial shortfalls. The city approved a 27% pay raise to the largest group of employees with no economic security to do so. And our county has so grossly underfunded one of the most important departments in our entire community, which does health and safety. And one of the few times we can get everyone together in a room to plan for the greater benefit of citizens, we're spent on discussing luxury. So my hope is that we're coming together more often to discuss mitigation of the crisis that we're going to be enduring. In the last 2 months, we've lost roughly 200 childcare slots. That is in a county where less than 4 in 10 children have access to childcare that they need already. Over 25,000 people in Shawnee County are food insecure, and our local safety net provider is just weeks away from a funding cliff. The estimated budget shortfall for the county to meet that need alone is $17 million. CDBG funds are on the line, and we haven't even begun to bring up the housing crisis. When people lose food access, childcare, housing, and jobs, the cost is passed right back to the government in the form of emergency services, homelessness, incarceration, and preventable public health crises. So my hope is that we start entertaining more of these meetings together to prioritize the collective well-being of our community. We're facing a convergence of crises: economic instability, underfunded public health systems, escalating housing insecurity, and threats to people's basic needs, which should be our discussion that brings us all together. We need basic responsible governance. We need budgets rooted in reality, informed by evidence that align with the most pressing needs of people. The threat of a recession is real, but the bigger threat is a failure to plan for it. And unlike a dam breach, this one is happening now. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we just have a couple of minutes left. If there are any announcements that anybody on the governing body or the clerk has to make in conclusion of our meeting. Okay, seeing none, there being no further business to come before this body, this meeting is adjourned.